It's all gonna be in there.
Do it, buddy. Do it. You do it.
I'm doing it. It's done. It's doing it.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you to explain your exposure to Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies in general, and educate me some. So I have a cursory understanding of how this works. Right?
Okay.
But I would like to know better, and I haven't purchased any type of cryptocurrency.
Gotcha.
And I'm happy to talk to you about why, which I suspect you may be curious about anyway.
Sure, but I probably can relate, because up until last week I had also not purchased.
Okay, what made you buy some?
What made me buy some?
Yeah, why did you decide to do it yesterday?
I didn't do it yesterday. That was but why? So that's a different thing. But last week when I decided to buy Bitcoin, I did it specifically because I heard that was it John McAfee?
Yeah.
Had made the claim not too long ago that it could rise up to 500,000, and he's a bit of an eccentric.
Sure.
But he's also not dumb. And I wanted to know why he had a specific number. Why he thought that it could go from where it was currently at, which was around, it was somewhere between 1,000 and 6,000.
Sure.
Why it could go up to 500,000. Like, it seemed weird to me that someone of his type would specifically name a number like that. So it got me thinking, and I thought, well, what if Bitcoin actually started displacing currencies? Like, what if people started using Bitcoin instead of,
right,
or stores of value, I should say.
But I mean, there's no real limit to what it could go up to if you want to take that.
Sure there is. I mean, you have the total money supply of the world. It would not go above that.
But money supply in the world is not a static number. That changes.
Right, and so yeah, if you're at the current time.
No, I don't even think that's a fair. I mean, I see where you're coming from, but today when a bank gives a loan out, they're essentially creating money and increasing the money supply.
You're talking about like the derivatives market and that kind of stuff, where basically you have all this kind of fictitious fake currency that's basically billions and trillions of dollars more than will ever actually exist.
Right.
But it's there, and it still has practical investment purposes.
Right, but so when a bank does that, sure, calling that a derivative is accurate, I suppose. That's not what I think of when you say...
I don't even understand the word. Honestly, I don't know what derivatives really mean or refer to. I just know that there's this concept of kind of this predicted kind of debt or currency of like a derivatives market, where there's all this basically currency or wealth that doesn't actually exist, but people still trade in it.
So you could... I don't want to get too far off topic here,
sure.
but so let me just recap. When a bank gives a loan out, they're essentially creating money where there wasn't any before.
Okay.
They're making a loan that is increasing the total money supply in circulation, right? And they're creating that. Because
they're not responsible for it?
They are in a sense. So like if you get a loan, if you get a mortgage,
that's called leverage, right? They're allowed to leverage their wealth up to a certain percentage.
Do I need to worry about this cat eating this?
Possibly, yeah. Bunker, we're putting you off the counter because you're not allowed to be up here anyways.
Well, I will save that cake for now. So, okay, so when a bank makes a loan, they are allowed to they're allowed to extend themselves to a certain level.
Beyond what they have.
Correct. So back in the day, it was 1-to-1. You had, for any withdrawal, you needed to have that amount of deposit. Let's go back
in the olden days,
standard,
when it was like easy to think about money.
In the golden days, yeah.
No, olden.
Yeah, but golden because gold standard.
Yeah.
But so we've come off the gold standard now over 100 years ago, and like currently, when the government wants to increase economic activity, all they do is change the base interest rate that banks have access to, right? So when they make money easier to borrow, there's more money in circulation. It's not physical money anymore. But so when they create a loan, they give you, let's say $300,000 to buy a house, right? That's money that didn't exist before the bank loaned it to you, and you gave it to another bank or whoever's buying.
I'm gonna run and take a pill real quick.
Go for it.
The headiness of the conversation, I'm gonna be like tapped within like a minute. Sorry, keep going.
It's quite all right. So, well, did you have a question about?
Let's not get too far off. I think you were explaining to me the concept of leverage or derivatives, that kind of stuff. But I think I get it. I don't need to get it.
We didn't really get into derivatives.
Yeah, but we don't need to for this conversation.
Okay, so where were we? So I wanted to know what made you purchase.
Right. So I tried to figure out why the number 500,000.
Sure.
Long story short, I'll just, instead of telling the whole story, in a nutshell, I figured out that if you replace the gold market, which is about $8 trillion,
I see.
with 21 million Bitcoin, which is not really 21 million, it's a little less than that, but
right.
Which I learned today.
Right, but it will max out at a
maximum of 21 million.
Okay.
Just divide 8 trillion by 21 million. You get 350,000.
Do you think Bitcoin can replace gold?
I am willing to speculate $4,000 of Bitcoin that it might.
Okay. So you think it is plausible that we could live in a world at some point in the not too distant future where instead of diversifying with gold, people go and buy Bitcoin?
I wouldn't say necessarily instead of, but possibly instead of. Maybe it's. I think the reality will probably be unpredictable.
Of course.
Possibly complicated fusion of things or whatever.
But Bitcoin's not even the only cryptocurrency now.
Right. I can go into all the details about why. And so I can, instead of making you ask me the questions, I can just start talking about it. But if you want to guide the conversation or whatever.
Hey, I feel like you have a different perspective on this than I do. I'm a very if you could say that, old school, conservative, slow investor. And, there are reasons why I still haven't purchased Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency, even though I expect it to continue going up.
I'm curious, why not? If you expect it to continue going up, why would you not invest in that?
Well, because I expect it to continue.
It's not at a rate that you would want?
No, I think the rate's unpredictable, but
Sure.
I certainly think it's within the realm of possibilities. I even think it's probable that it will go up, but my risk tolerance isn't such that I'm willing to be in something of that nature. I don't see cryptocurrencies as being a safe investment, right?
Oh, definitely not.
Right. So, I've done really well every year since I've started investing. Every single year. I don't think I've had a single year of less than 15% return.
That's really good.
And I started close to 20 years ago. So, I've been through some bad markets. So I don't tend to take risk. I don't tend to take much risk.
Do you hedge at all?
So do you now know the meaning of hedge? Or
I've explained to you what I think it is. So I don't know if that's actually...
So when I say invest, I have become more cash heavy this year than I've ever been in my life.
What does that mean?
That means I have a lot more cash on hand than investments.
So just liquid assets, like in bank
I
accounts?
mean cash. I don't mean paper cash, but I do mean, yes, deposit in an account, ready to use.
Right. It's not really a high interest investment at all.
Not at all.
It's
not at all.
It's insured, FDIC or something like that.
It is, technically, but see, again, like Bitcoin, like cryptocurrencies, like the gold standard, it's only as good as the backing institution or the backing systems can handle. And if things really go south, FDIC insurance isn't going to mean anything. We have a long history of flood insurance. We have a long history of government-backed insurance that doesn't pay out when there's too many when there's too many people to pay, too much money to pay out. So FDIC insurance only means so much. I don't take it to mean that it's going to be problem-free. Are we okay?
No, it stopped recording for some reason. I think I might have it. Oh yeah, I had it set up there for 5 minutes, so it'll take 25-minute videos now. Never mind. It was taking 5-minute videos and then stopping. So now it'll. All right, now I'll keep going for 25 minutes.
No problem. So, Yeah, so FDIC insurance, I think, only means so much. I think it makes people feel better. It makes people feel like their deposits are safe, and I mean that's really why it was created, right? Because there were
It
bank
has
runs.
insurance
We don't.
against recoverable economic conditions or something like that.
Well, I don't really see it as like how many times has FDIC insurance actually paid out?
Gotcha. So it's more just the purpose of making people feel safe.
I
Not
think it's so
actually.
that people don't have a run on the bank.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't. They don't
And
have enough money
yeah.
to help if it
Right.
happened.
If it did, it wouldn't really
I
serve its
think
purpose.
around 2008, 2009, around and after the financial crash, there were a couple of banks, smaller banks that went out of business. The government propped up and forced, Bank of America to purchase Merrill Lynch and so forth. That FDIC insurance didn't have to come into effect, and I believe a few small banks went out of business. Only a handful where FDIC insurance did come into play. But you're only talking about
Right.
a few thousand people's worth of accounts.
Sure.
You're not talking about, there's 300 million plus people in the US. And, the government just literally doesn't have enough money to pay it out. And even if they were willing to, we even have a president right now that says, United States should default on their. Now, I don't think I don't think it's going to come to that ever. I think the United States will continue paying its, bonds with interest as they should. But, we live in a world where I don't consider that to be that. So government bonds, U.S. government bonds, AAA rated stuff is supposed to be the safest thing you can do. You could call that hedging, right?
Sure.
So just to fill anybody watching in, we were talking about the concept of hedging before. So it's basically if things don't go the way you expect them to, you want to have some level of safety.
Right.
I would say that's hedging.
Yeah.
And currently, I view cash in this country right now as pretty safe, and I think the stock market's overinflated. I certainly think Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are overinflated, but I may lose out on. In fact, I think I am losing out every day, and I will continue to for some time by not wanting to take that risk because Bitcoin's value, even though you can argue that it's untraceable, it's not taxable, so forth. It has a lot of benefits. You circumvent quite a bit of.
I wouldn't use those as the benefits.
What would you say are the benefits?
Some other time. A little later.
Okay, so even though Bitcoin seems to have some obvious, even though we may disagree on why the obvious benefits are, Bitcoin seems to offer some value that other forms of investing don't. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so despite that, Bitcoin exists and is going for 11,000, whatever it is today, because people are willing to pay that per Bitcoin. And this reminds me of any other bubble we've seen. I think the stock market's overinflated. I remember, under 10 years ago, it was below 7,000, the Dow was. And today it's a little over 24,000. Now, our GDP hasn't quadrupled. Are those companies profits, forward-looking profits, expected to be 4 times what they were compared to at any point within the last 10 years? Not even close on average, right? There's many blue chip stocks and companies that are making less money today, are less stable today. Their forward-facing profits are expected to be lower, and yet their stocks are much, much higher.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the stock market's overinflated. I think the real estate market's overinflated too. If you look at housing values and what's happened there, sure it didn't need to crash as heavily as it did, several years ago.
Yeah, I had to sell short in that market.
But
I did.
I believe you. But I don't think it should have gone as high as it's now gotten either. So again, Bitcoin to me is currently overvalued, I think, because its value to me doesn't merit the price at which it's changing hands currently. But I've been wrong before, and I am not saying that all it takes for the value to continue to exist is for enough people to believe in it. And if people see it as a viable alternative to gold, yeah, I mean you're gonna make a lot of money. I'm not gonna make a lot of money on it. I'm gonna miss out.
I'm not going to make a lot of money.
You'll make some money.
I'll make some. Yeah. 4,000 might become 100,000 at most.
Yeah, but the thing is, Did you hear about the Winklevoss
$11
twins?
million in 2013. They're
Yeah.
now billionaires, but
Correct.
not really. They're not really billionaires.
No, why not?
You can't withdraw that much Bitcoin from Bitcoin and hope to make that much money from it. Like,
Why
if they
not?
withdraw their Bitcoin, it's going to drastically affect the price of Bitcoin. So
Well,
they
can
can't
withdraw
simply
it over
just
time.
liquidate their Bitcoin and become billionaires. They certainly cannot do that.
No? How much? What? How big is the market for Bitcoin right now? You take all of the
Market
Bitcoin.
cap is around 160 billion right now.
I see. I did not know that.
So
So-
that's part of why I went in, why I did.
I see. That's pretty low.
Yeah.
That's
But it's
pretty low.
also
But it's also-
interestingly high.
It's also very, very high. That's right.
It's right in that zone where I feel like that was my main reason for why I bought Bitcoin last week. That's why I wasn't particularly interested in Bitcoin up until relatively recently, is because and I want to just point out, like, you've been, like most people have been, focused on the price of Bitcoin, 10,000, whatever. That price is completely arbitrary. That's meaningless, and to focus on it is a mistake, I think, because it puts people in the mindset of a concept of a Bitcoin being worth something. And what if you phrase it like, if it does if it replaces gold, it's going to be like a bit house. Like, you're going to have a Bitcoin being worth what a house is worth. Like, that's not really a coin, and it's just a store of value.
Well, but you have to have some metric to judge it by, and I think it's natural, normal, and perfectly healthy for people to look at that point.
Right, but they're comparing that in their minds. I don't think you are necessarily, but I think a lot of people do. They look at the price of Bitcoin and they're unimpressed by, oh, it's $60. Oh, it's $600. Oh, when it's at 10,000, it's like, oh, wow, it's $10,000. And that number doesn't mean anything outside of the context of the market cap.
No, of course not. Outside of the market cap, it still has meaning as far as, you can buy in at 5, sell at 10. You've doubled your investment.
It has meaning in a relative sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's the only sense that matters for most people buying Bitcoin, right? Like, I know you can buy fractions of a Bitcoin, but if you can buy low and then sell high, there you go.
So you're thinking about it like an investor, looking to make profit off of it by buying it and selling it.
Sure.
And I'm not thinking of it like that. I'm not looking to buy it and then sell it back for dollars. Like, I'm buying it as a hedge in case it destabilizes gold and or the dollar. Then we turn to Bitcoin and start using it. And people are no longer thinking, oh, how much dollars can I get for my Bitcoin?
Well, that's why I don't think it's a good currency, because its value has been so, it's fluctuating so much. It's like living in Venezuela or something. Like, you can't use...
It's a very volatile currency right now. But
I don't think anybody's using it as
understand
currency either.
Oh, no, it is being used as currency, but not like what you're talking about. Like, so it's not being used to buy stuff at gas stations or that kind of stuff.
Right.
And there's good reasons for that. And it's one of the reasons why I think Bitcoin is not necessarily the best long-term hedge for cryptocurrencies, because there are cryptocurrencies that work a little better for that kind of thing, but they're still not. So it's one of those things in progress, trying to find a cryptocurrency that can be a true replacement.
This could very easily, cryptocurrency as an investment or cryptocurrency as a currency.
Those are both interesting and separate issues.
They are separate issues.
But also, I guess a related observation that I heard that was pithy, kind of memorable, and maybe you've heard of it too, is that you can't go and buy gas with gold either. You can't just go to a grocery market and pay for groceries in gold. No,
that's a good point. But I think gold, maybe it has some legacy romance attached to it from the gold standard. What
I frequently hear about people justifying why gold is different from Bitcoin and why it's a better store of value is because it can be used to make things like...
I think that's not a good argument.
I agree. I think it's a bad argument. People are often saying, oh, you can make jewelry from it, because that's like,
but
at least half of gold is... I'm like, that's a luxury thing.
Yeah,
like, people can't eat jewelry.
No.
People can't live in jewelry.
Right.
So that's, I think, a bad justification. There are other reasons that are also good reasons, but...
Do share.
Just like you can protect gold. You can store it in a fort.
Yeah, but most of the gold holdings today aren't physical gold holdings. It's
right. I was going to say, the U.S. government has like 11 billion.
Right.
It's not much compared to the 8 trillion gold value. Like, there's a lot of virtual or whatever.
Right.
So, but that's what we're talking
value,
about.
Sure.
Right.
Just earlier today, I was talking. So here's the thing about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, though. One of my cousins in Turkey reached out to me a few months ago and said, "Hey, maybe we should get in on this Bitcoin thing." And I feel bad, but I said, it's too volatile for me. It's not my thing.
Sure.
I hope I didn't keep him from buying, but at the same token, I feel like if my cousin in Turkey
Right.
is looking at buying cryptocurrency, and my middle school English teacher has cryptocurrency, and you do, and everybody on Facebook's talking about it, like it's not an investment; it's a bubble. If that's the case, if
So
everybody
that's
has
the
their
way
grandmother,
everybody's
like
talking about it now. and
my
recently.
cousin doesn't have much money that I know about.
So for him to spend any significant amount is actually allowed on Bitcoin.
Well, I mean, I don't know that he has. I should ask him. But he was certainly seriously considering it.
Like my total net worth is not significant. My 401k, I have about 100,000 in for a 40-year-old. That's not that much.
You're 40?
Yeah.
Good for you. You've aged well.
Over the hill.
You must have spent a lot of time inside.
Yes. Do you know my medical needs for that? Right.
I know some.
Okay. Yeah. I do have to avoid the sun.
I know. That's why that was funny.
Yeah. I just wasn't sure if you were referring to that or not.
Yeah. So I think anytime you have, I don't want to speak badly on behalf of my cousin. I don't know his actual financial situation, but I feel like if he's looking at it in terms of making money,
right,
which is I think how most people are looking at it.
Yeah.
Then it's a bubble.
Okay, and that's understandable why people would think that.
Well, I mean, I have I have a good friend who makes a lot of money in a stable job, and he just started buying some Bitcoin. And I think we were sharing.
How much
stories.
did he buy?
He started out with something small, like $1,000 or something.
Sure.
Which is chump change for him. It's very close to not having much meaning.
It's more than zero, but not really meaningful in terms of.
Not to him.
Right.
But
well, no, he put the effort in. His time is effort, and that's valuable to him. So he put in a non-trivial amount of something, but.
Well, I think in terms of investing, that's a trivial amount for him.
Yeah. In terms of the actual monetary value.
And as far as time, I look at it as, like I started working by fixing cars or appliances or whatever when I was in high school, and I mean I still do that and I still make money off of it, but it's nowhere near being a primary source of income. So I think a lot of it's just keeping busy or enjoying fixing something or whatever. So I think his involvement in Bitcoin doesn't represent the time investment believing into it. I think it's like gambling for him. But what it's not is an actual investment. If it was an investment, it would be a larger amount. So right. I feel like it's like a game / get rich quick thing for a lot of people. That gives me pause.
Yeah, of course.
When I've had a lot of talks like this with many family members about the value of things, and I feel like if you, me, the guy at the local gas station, the hedge fund manager in New York, and everybody in between is talking about how real estate's a good investment, at this point it's not anymore.
Yeah.
Right? If everybody thinks it's a good investment, the price should already be factored in.
So to support what you're saying, there's 2 bits of information I know recently. The distribution of wallets and wallet sizes in Bitcoin is interesting to note. Like the IRS just recently required that Coinbase, which is the largest exchange, give all the records for anyone who's dealt in more than $20,000 worth of Bitcoin in a calendar year to them, so that they can use that for fraud detection. I think that's the main reason.
Sure.
But there were 14,000 accounts. So 14,000 people have done more than $20,000 worth of.
Is that transactions or
Bitcoin related? Either I don't know if it's both buying and selling, but it's they've either made or lost. I think that much in a calendar year.
Well,
so 14,000 is not terribly many. Like no. It's actually.
But I bet that's not going to stay 14,000. I mean, it's in the news, it's on Facebook, it's everywhere.
And you have to kind of wonder how many of those 14,000 accounts are the same people, just under different accounts. So
that's just one exchange, though.
That's the main
biggest
exchange.
One, though, isn't
it's
it?
the biggest one, and it's significant.
So a question I've had is, what happens to cryptocurrency? Let's just say Bitcoin. What happens to Bitcoin if the United States government, the Chinese government, the Indian government, the Russian government decide that Bitcoin exchanges should not be legal anymore because people are using them for actions that are against the state, or that the state doesn't agree with, or that they can't track them well enough, or whatever? and it goes from being easily traded, legal to own, to an underground. Then it's no longer a really good investment source either. And if you can't easily exchange it for money, it goes from being this, and I'll put it in quotes, viable investment vehicle to being this illegal to own and hard to trade.
No, that's a valid concern.
But what happens? What do you think happens?
I agree. So on this, I've given it some thought. So do you think that's even possible? I think it's possible for China to ban certain situations of Bitcoin because of the type of government they are.
Well, if you look at what happened with a lot of torrent networks, I would say so, absolutely. I mean, they've shut down all sorts of stuff. They've shut down a lot of peer-to-peer programs and hosts, right? I mean, you used to have things like LimeWire and Kazaa and whatever, and
Kind of. Yes and no. So yes, in the sense that they were able to shut those down because of the way they worked. They were programmed. They were hard-coded to operate on certain protocols, certain ports.
So you think if it was illegal with a serious punishment, as I would hope it would have if they actually were serious about banning this, the use of cryptocurrencies, which I think all governments have a vested interest in making them not legal, right? Because it's hard to trace, right? It can be a private transaction.
I think there's evidence that shows the opposite of that. I think that perception of it being hard to trace and being used for criminal activity is something that they are using to try to sway public perception against Bitcoin.
Really?
And I think that there's reasons for that, and I think those reasons are interesting.
Well, that's a whole different philosophical argument.
So there is a different cryptocurrency called Monero, which is now what I'm mining. I'm not paying into it, but I'm mining it. And that actually has privacy built into it. So Bitcoin does not, in a sense, that Monero does. And so Monero is actually potentially, from what I hear, favored by criminal organizations because it's got the privacy aspect, the anonymity aspect built in. Whereas Bitcoin has a degree of that, but not as much. So, for example, there's a well-known case, I think, of Silk Road. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
They got busted, and they were able to use their Bitcoin transactions to basically, I think, as part of the process of discovering who was involved and how much and that kind of thing, because all the Bitcoin transactions are on public record. So they were able to trace these transactions back and basically link them to certain accounts and link those accounts to people. And I think that's part of what they used. So in a certain sense, Bitcoin transactions are anonymous. From what I understand so far, and this understanding may not be accurate, Bitcoin transactions, you can't necessarily tell certain things about them. I don't think you can tell what's being bought or sold. You can't necessarily tell how much. No, I think you can. This is I'm unclear about. But there are certain things you can and can't trace. There are certain things that you that are anonymous and aren't. But they were able to use Bitcoin transactions as part of their process for taking down Silk Road. From what I understand.
So what this situation reminds me of is the tulip mania, and I was looking up.
I've heard about it. I don't know anything about it, but I keep hearing references to tulip mania.
Well, what it was, I believe, is an exchange. I think that's our guest.
Does she know we're recording?
I believe she does.
Okay. Oh no, it's not. Unless our guest is UPS. Thank you. Hey, how's it going, Marie? I'm well. I'm having a conversation with a friend on video, but it's fun. You want any chocolate? You want any chocolate? All right, go deliver. I'll be with you in a sec. Let me
go for it.
Stop my video real quick, just because the UPS person is also a friend. She worked with the cat rescue that I worked with, and I'm gonna offer her some chocolate because that's just what I do.
It is what you do. Well, my recordings are still going. And here I would like you to glance at this graph showing the tulip price index. Now, I'm going to take a screenshot of this and. Hey.
Hey.
How you doing?
Good. You really getting 15% return on your investments?
I have, yeah.
What are you in?
I'm in all sorts of stuff.
I'm getting 9.5. So.
That's very, very good. I'm actively working on mine. You're still on video, by the way.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, So to call that investment simply is perhaps misleading because I have to keep working on them. Like I buy and sell houses, and
Okay.
it's what I do for a living.
Okay. That makes more sense. So I'm in the market, but I'm not.
In fact, I should ask you what you're doing to passively get 9% every year, because that's pretty good.
It's not great. It's 2 or 3 mutual funds, a couple of cap indices.
Oh, well, that's not long term then. That's just last 2-3 years or something.
5. So it's
That's fine.
relatively young, so 5 years is.
Well, but I mean, for the last 5 years, everything's been up quite a bit. You didn't have to work very hard to do.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So no, if you maintain that for another 5 years without being actively involved, then you're an oracle, and everybody should ask you for advice.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I will. Let's see here. Here is, I'm just pulling up a graph of the Dow when his internet connection allows me to. Are you using a lot of bandwidth for something, or?
Not really.
No?
There's some mining going on, but that doesn't use much bandwidth.
So here's the Dow from 5 years ago to now, and you've gone from roughly 12,000 to 24,000. So it's doubled in 5 years. Yeah. So everybody in an index fund or whatever, yeah.
Okay.
So to have done significantly worse, you would have had to manage it poorly.
Okay.
Um, that's not to say that it wasn't good of you to be in whatever you're in.
No.
Because plenty of people who are not exposed to the stock market didn't make that. But yeah, my personal exposure is less and less in the stock market.
More and more real estate and those types of things.
Yeah, but I'm feeling uneasy about that too. I think real estate's a bit of a bubble in this area also, but...
It is a bubble, it's not a bit of a bubble.
But see, here's the thing though, as people are moving from the northeast and the west and whatever into this area,
yeah.
I mean, they're now making more land, so the land is going to go up in value, and the population's going up, and people are buying houses and making more people, and those people are buying stuff, and is it a bubble? What would be the natural rate of increase?
I don't know, but I feel like all it would take is 2 or 3 of the major corporations leaving, or deciding.
Why would they leave? There's so much momentum of it coming here.
North Carolina tax structure. All it would take is Virginia or South Carolina or somebody relatively nearby to say, we're going to offer you this so much better.
And for North Carolina to not do anything.
Yeah, but I don't.
I don't think it's that simple. I feel like we also have, the Silicon Valley has been a good place to be in for tech companies, even though their tax structure sucks compared to here.
Really?
But
I don't know Silicon Valley.
Their taxes are a lot higher in California than they are here.
Okay.
And here we have sort of a research, the research triangle part. And we've got all these colleges, and got fine people like Ryan over here working.
You are now fine. Did you know that you're now fine?
I'm not fine and I'm not working.
Not fine and not working. Double whammy.
So, yeah, no, I think for an unmanaged investment account to be at 10% per year or 9%, that's fantastic.
Okay.
I would put some money in there if you could point me in a direction that would do that.
So, I can give you my Edward Jones broker, but that's about it.
No, I mean, like I said, an index fund would have done the same thing, so that's not. But you find me something that did that 10 years ago, then I'm all over it. I'd like to look into that.
Fair.
Or 5 years from now.
Yeah, they say that going forward.
Yeah. But so one of the main tenets of safe investing, I think, is supposed to be rebalancing your portfolio every so often, which is. Are you familiar with what that is?
Yeah.
So.
It's just a pain.
Rebalancing.
You have to look at what's performing well and what's failing to perform well, and then you need to shift your account away from the things that are starting to fail or that are not doing as well as you would want them to do.
No.
I was going to say, that
No.
doesn't seem logical to me, because
It's the
how does
opposite.
past performance indicate future performance?
It's the opposite. You're supposed to get out of stuff that's doing well into stuff that's not doing well.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
The idea is the more something goes up, the less room it has to go up. It's the very reason a lot of people aren't going into Bitcoin now, because it's already
It's
gone
too
from
high.
1,000 to 9,000 or 10,000 in a year per
Uh-huh.
coin.
That makes sense.
I think if you're looking at it as an investment, I should try to start. Are we going to start talking about that again, or do you want to keep going?
Mine's,
You guys should probably go on the tulips.
mine's,
Sorry. I did not mean to sidetrack.
No, you're good.
That's one of the advantages yours has over mine.
What's that?
You can just keep recording.
Because of the space, or yeah?
This is going to run out of space.
Yeah.
Another 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I don't need to record the whole thing.
Sure. So tulips was an investment vehicle they used in, was it the 1600s? I should read more about this too. But basically, the idea is so we talked about how gold has the value because, however you explain it, it's because people see the value in it, right? Or believe that it has value. And it's not,
Well, I looked
nothing.
it up recently. There's since 1200, it's been stable with an order of magnitude of value. So the value of gold has never fluctuated by more than an order of magnitude. And
What do you mean by order of
600 BC
magnitude?
is, I think, when we first started using gold as a currency.
What do you mean by order of magnitude?
If you adjust its value for, along that whole period of time, so that all the values are equivalent to each other in terms of the actual value, like inflation.
I don't follow.
It's like, how you have to adjust $1970 to match $2015 because they aren't the same thing.
Right.
Kind of if you do the same thing but with gold,
Uh-huh.
so that the values that
Well,
you
that's
get.
easy to do from 1900 to today. It's not as easy to do from 5000 BC.
No, it's we only started using gold in 600 BC.
Okay.
But they do have some of this who's been
Sure.
done by historians, and they've done this kind of calculation.
I mean, I was throwing that
It's-
out there, but yeah.
It's arguable whether or not it's accurate, but if you look at the data for up to about 1200 AD to now, gold has basically retained its stability within about an order of magnitude.
And what do you mean by order of magnitude?
So it's gone from approximately like 200 to 2000 US dollars.
Okay.
So within one order of magnitude,
Okay.
basically.
Do you think Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency, all the cryptocurrencies together, have a possibility of changing that dynamic of gold? Do you think they could upset gold's order of magnitude
That's why it has.
swing? Okay.
That's like, I'm not doing it for investment purposes. I think, like you, if I was doing it for investment purposes, I would have put more into it, and I would have done so with the intention of trying to make money.
Right.
I'm not doing that. I'm putting only as much in as I can afford to lose, and I'm doing it as a hedge in case the unlikely but possible event of
I
like
see.
destabilizing
I
gold
see.
or the dollar. So when I bought Bitcoin, that was my main reason.
So,
for doing
so
it.
you're not intending to put much more in there, if any?
Not right now,
Yeah.
and
enough.
I'm trying to find other ways of doing it, like mining or looking at the newer Bitcoin offerings that
Yeah.
may still be more
Really?
interesting. Because Bitcoin is interesting, but if you look at the other some of the other,
Yeah,
crypto-
the other possibility, sorry to interrupt, is I feel like Bitcoin could become the MySpace of cryptocurrency come 5 years from today.
I think you could.
It very well might.
It's got some significant flaws to its design, and they are like, for example, one of the things I read about today that I think is great that a lot of people don't know is that cryptocurrency's hashing algorithm is vulnerable to quantum computing. So if we get good quantum computers up and running, I don't think it's going to matter too much though, because I think the hashing algorithm is only important for mining purposes, and mining is not going to be a huge role in the crypto or in Bitcoin's market for like it's already becoming less of a factor. It's no longer profitable just to
Right.
buy Bitcoin.
I've heard that.
So it's like, I don't think that's going to be as huge a role, but if it ends up being that quantum computers can break the cryptographic keys being used to secure Bitcoin's network, or make Bitcoin basically robust like it is, that would be a major problem.
Yeah.
And so there's a new currency out there that uses a different hashing algorithm. I forget what it's called, but it's not as vulnerable, or it's not vulnerable to quantum computing. I forget which. It's probably just the not as vulnerable.
Sure.
But it's an idea. It's like,
Right.
this could be one of the things that might cause Bitcoin to become the MySpace of cryptocurrencies, where fundamentally, if IBM releases a quantum computer and it basically renders Bitcoin unusable or untenable as a secure currency, Bitcoin's done.
That's it, yeah.
And if there's another cryptocurrency that is available that fixes that problem, depending on market conditions.
So why do you think we stuck to gold? And I've in an earlier conversation with a buddy of mine, and again, this is one of the things that scares me off of Bitcoin, is everybody's talking about it, everybody's got at least some interest in it, and investment vehicles they're just not that popular. Not everybody's talking about investing, like this is something I've cared about for a long time.
Yeah.
And by and large, the average population doesn't care about investing. They care about lottery tickets way more than they care about investing. Yeah.
People are dumb.
Well, people are easily distracted by the possibility of a big payday, I think.
Oh yeah, that too.
I mean, yes, they're dumb also. I was just trying to be nice. They're absolute people are.
I'm not discounting myself.
Sure,
I'm also dumb in similar fashion.
Yep, we're also very dumb. We're all very dumb.
Yeah,
That said,
so
I've never purchased
when I made the
lottery
decision to buy Bitcoin, I said, how much of what I have in my net worth can I afford to lose on a speculative hedge?
Yeah.
And possibly, maybe I'll make some money off of it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of hoping, honestly, that I don't. Because if I make money off this for the reasons that I think I might if I hedge, I'm probably going to lose money overall.
Well, you're only hoping to not make money for that specific reason. I mean, you could say, hey, it'd be great if it went, 20 times in value and stayed there and everything else was hunky-dory, which could happen.
It could. So there's a number of different cases that might be in the middle.
Right.
And
but I think that it is plausible, likely, I don't know if I would use the word likely, but definitely plausible that there will be a big crash in the value of Bitcoin.
Oh yeah.
But it's and a lot of people will pull out, and it'll be. I mean, I know people whose entire life investments were in the stock market, and they pulled out at the within months of the worst time. I'm talking people who were in the workforce for 30, 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
They could have stayed in the market another 4 years and came out with triple the money.
Right.
But hindsight's 20/20, and one of the investment books I read early on that I really like. And probably was influential to me being so risk averse. 4 Pillars of Investing. It was talking about how you should make your plan, write it down if necessary, and stick to it regardless of what happens.
Yeah.
And it says, and it was the example, it's one thing to say, if you're flying an aircraft and it loses, 75% of its power and the wings barely holding on, and your plan, the best course of action is to do X, Y, and Z. It's another to actually be in that situation and do it versus, what you decided should be done. Mm-hmm. And as a person who's, I have lost money in individual investments. In certain cases, more than 99% of my investments have been wiped out. One of my biggest losses was
more than 99% of your total investments, or
into a
more than
particular
90%?
vehicle.
Oh, so a particular investment you would lose up to 99%.
That's happened to me, and as stubborn as I am.
I was saying, being able to recover from a total loss of 99% is impressive.
I am not set up such that I could lose 99% unless there was just no earth left, basically.
I'm working on it.
But so I had a very small, I won't call it hedge, I'll say gamble, into the National Bank of Greece in the middle of the financial crisis. Now, I've done that with other firms and done well. And like I said, even those years, 2010, 11, 12 were good to me. But, I bought some stock in the National Bank of Greece, and my entire investment's probably worth less than $20 today.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, it wasn't tens of thousands of dollars, but
it was it was an amount that you did not want to lose.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I don't want to lose any amount, but some losses make me feel bad, and some don't make me feel as bad. That's one of the ones I didn't like. Yeah. Yeah, I always hesitate to say that I'm a wise investor. I would say that I give good advice. I don't always follow my own advice. I think I've just been lucky more than anything.
Sure. I think, so some of the things that you brought up that I think are meaningful to just quickly comment on, I think that you have a lot of investment tips, the book, The Four Pillars,
Big time.
that make a lot of sense and have made a lot of sense for a long time.
But maybe they don't anymore, or?
We are looking at a technology that is basically like the internet for currency. And the internet was not something that has been around, like that was transformative. That was something that never happened before, and it caused a lot of things to happen that were unpredictable.
Well, something that had never happened before, I wouldn't agree with that. Inventions of things like electricity were quite transformative.
Sure, yeah, it's similar in ways, but the internet changed certain things in ways that had never been changed before.
The Industrial Revolution? I don't know. I wouldn't. Transformative, yes. Like never before, I don't want to go that far.
Well, I mean, you're saying that it's like before in the sense that it's disrupted things on a broad scale.
Yeah.
And yes, but I'm saying specifically, we have Amazon now, where we did not have Amazon before the internet.
Yeah, but we could order things off of a catalog before and stuff too.
Okay.
And even if the internet hadn't come about,
but we couldn't get reviews off a catalog and have those reviews.
I bet we could. If we had computers for long enough, you could have reviews. It just wouldn't be instant access to whatever. But maybe we could go to Redbox and get a disk, a terabyte jump drive, plug it into your computer, and find exactly what you want. You just have to pick up the phone to order it.
Okay.
So I think...
I mean, I can come up with examples that are not as easy to poke holes in if you want, but I think we both agree the Industrial Revolution disrupted things.
Yeah.
The Internet disrupted things. The Internet disrupted things in ways that were more difficult to predict. Not more difficult, just difficult to predict because there was no precedent for them. Just like the Industrial Revolution caused things that were unprecedented.
Yeah, just don't say more unpredictable or more disruptive.
Right.
And I'm with you all the way.
It's just, there were unpredictable, unprecedented changes.
And you say the internet, but I feel like miniaturization of computers and the fact that I can do a lot of the stuff from my phone with me and using GPS to, those are disruptive too.
Yeah, definitely.
And sure, they're built on the internet.
Sure. So timescale is relevant. So how long has it taken the internet to become popular?
But why are you separating the internet from, telecommunications in general? Like, you could argue that the telephone was
That's part of the internet.
Huge.
Sorry, no, I'm not really separating. Telecom and the internet are intertwined.
Like, you could take that one step further and say that's back to electricity or the telegraph or whatever.
It is. Yeah, it is.
Okay, so all right. So I guess all you were trying to say is that the internet was a disruptive technology, and we've reaped more of its benefits more recently compared to when it was first invented. Is that what?
I guess I'm just trying to frame Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies
as it's in
a way that makes sense to how I'm thinking about it. So I'm trying to use the whole internet thing as an analogy, and maybe it's a poor one.
That's fine. Are you saying that cryptocurrency probably will be as disruptive, and it's in its infancy? Is that what you're getting at?
I think it could be.
Okay, could be. Do you think it will be?
I have not invested money into Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. I've hedged some money.
I see.
I put $4,000 of my.
Here's the thing.
I can afford to lose $4,000.
Sure. If I do that and you do that, your roommate does that, your UPS delivery person does it, and everybody else does it, then we're all going to make some money.
Maybe.
Yeah. If everybody's hedging, we're all going to make some money.
Right.
If some of us are investing, we're all going to make a lot of money. If too many of us are investing, I'll say gambling instead, then we might all lose a lot of money. Now they're talking about selling Bitcoin indexes and derivatives, and I mean, this does not sound good to me. Futures, yeah, this does not sound good to me at all. The idea that somebody will be trading Bitcoin futures is insane. I look forward to seeing what that's going to do. Like, so you're going to be able to bet on what we think Bitcoin is going to be worth in a year. I'd like to see what people do with that. Like,
I think it's absurd. I think it's meaningless. I think it's just
is it meaningless? It's a way you can make a lot of money.
So I have an idea that I'm working on technically that I think is actually going to possibly give an advantage, but I'm not going to talk about it on camera because
Sure.
I actually did the research, and there were 2 other websites kind of doing this.
Don't go too far into it if you don't want it to be public at this point.
Oh, I don't mind. It's just there are things about Bitcoin that are fundamentally flawed that I think could allow predicting its value in a real-time fashion, useful for making flash decisions.
I can't agree with that because you're whatever it may be that you think you know, you're assuming that all the players have perfect knowledge. Are you familiar with game theory? All the players in this game do not have perfect knowledge. They will not have perfect knowledge. Just because you think something will happen with its value.
How much do you know about how Bitcoin actually works, technically?
Some.
Do you understand how blockchain works?
Blockchain?
Do you understand the public ledger and the P2P kind of how it's disseminated?
Some. Not enough to speculate. Not enough to...
I understand it some as well. I don't understand it fully, but I understand it some.
I have no doubt you understand it better than me.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to gauge how much you understand. What you just said is inaccurate.
Well, tell me.
You said what I'm talking about requires perfect knowledge.
Okay.
Bitcoin is a public ledger. Everyone has full access to all of the transactions.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
That is perfect knowledge of a lot of information that could be potentially useful.
No, what I meant when I said perfect knowledge isn't the workings of Bitcoin. It is, like I hinted to earlier, so if everybody thinks the price of something is going to go up, I feel like that's already factored in.
So just as I'll give an illustrative point that'll give away the game of what I'm talking about to anybody that's actually understanding it. You're familiar with the whole Satoshi, whatever the guy's name is that...
invented or created or whatever.
He's got 1 million Bitcoin.
Yep.
He's never done anything with them. The speculation is maybe he's lost the keys, or maybe he's dead. Maybe they're waiting for an agenda or something. Who knows?
Right.
What happens...
How many Bitcoin are there, by the way? Say that again.
21 million.
21, and he's got 1 million of
1
those.
million.
Okay.
What happens the first time he does anything at all with any of that Bitcoin?
Any of it? I mean, it has a major impact on the value of Bitcoin, obviously. But, I mean, he could sell 100 and that wouldn't have much of an impact, right?
No.
Right, so he could just sell
I think
100.
it would have an impact.
Why?
It indicates a change. He's got 1 million Bitcoin.
Uh-huh.
A significant fraction of the confidence of Bitcoin is going to be wondering what's he going to do next if he's doing anything at all.
No. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
This is no different than an insider selling the stock of a company. Just because somebody sells a little bit of insider stock, like I'll tell you, I've been long on Apple for 11 years now. It's done me very well. Every so often people sell, Tim Cook might sell his stock, Steve Jobs used to sell some stock to pay for stuff. That doesn't mean anything, one.
Mm-hmm.
Second, you're assuming, you're talking about loss of confidence within Bitcoin investors that one of the original people is selling. That's like saying, what happens when the Winklevoss people start selling their Bitcoin.
That's exactly what I was going to get to.
Nothing is wrong with somebody saying, I want to cash out a little bit of my Bitcoin. People do that with...
But what if they dump it all?
What if they dump it all? Okay, so when I said perfect information, I was saying that you assume a confidence hit because you think that you're going to know Mr. Japanese Man, and you're going to know that Mr. Winklevoss and Mr. Other Winklevoss sold their stuff. But just because you know, and just because, let's say I'm an owner, I have the access to this information, doesn't mean that I also know. Doesn't mean the same thing at all.
What do you mean?
Okay, so like I said, I own a lot of Apple stock, and I've owned it for a long time. And I know when, or at least I have access to knowing when Tim Cook sells some of his shares, right?
Sure.
But I bet your roommate is exposed to Apple right now, and she will be at some point exposed to Bitcoin. Pretty certain, unless it crashes before this year's up. Chances are she's going to be exposed to some Bitcoin, whether she likes to.
I'll probably give her some as a Christmas gift.
The point, though, is she's exposed to Apple right now. You're exposed to Apple right now. Are you looking into when Tim Cook sells his shares? No, you don't care. Exactly. So a lot of people who have Bitcoin aren't going to know, potentially not care, or not care enough to look into or react on.
I think there's a flaw in your argument.
Tell me.
I think it's called the tradition fallacy.
Tradition fallacy.
I'm not sure that's probably not the right word for it, but
Okay.
I think you get the idea from extrapolation.
Just because something's happened that way in the past doesn't
We
mean
keep applying all these principles from traditional investing, stock markets, other stuff, to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. And it's a new thing in certain very tangible ways that I think are meaningful.
I think one of the founders wanting to get a little bit of money out of it is just not that important. And that alone, the fact that
No, I agree with that. With that statement right there,
Okay.
one of the founders wanting to get a little bit of money out of it is not that concerning. It's just
Not at
different
all,
things.
in fact.
So you can like if they're getting a little bit out, that's one thing. What if they're getting a lot out? What if they're getting amount that's interesting out, or that kind of thing? What if a number of people with big wallets all do that at the same time? There's just a number of variety of situations.
That applies to any investment vehicle,
Yeah, it
any
does.
commodity,
Right.
So how is this the tradition fallacy, as you put it?
So it's two different things, but the tradition aspect is that so by comparing it to the stock market, you're comparing it to a market where the patterns for the market and the things involved in the market have been around for a long time. They've been around for how long?
But they don't have to refer to this market. There was the tulip mania I was talking about.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't think you got into it enough that I understood it.
So, okay, tulip mania basically refers to people buying tulip futures, even though tulips don't mean a whole lot.
Right.
To
There's
anyone.
there's no intrinsic value.
Well, there's some,
Not substantially.
correct. But, who's to say the value in gold is substantial?
Right, exactly. Same thing.
In fact, I was looking into this earlier, if you look at the graph of copper and compare it to gold, it's certainly never gone past 40%, I shouldn't say never, within the last 10 years, I believe, the two have been within 40% of each other. So how come when you talk about diversifying or long-term stable investing or whatever, people don't talk about copper? It's been quite stable on a somewhat upward trajectory. Why is it gold? It's just more romantic, I guess. There's more money in gold. Why is that, though? Anyway, my point is tulips are similarly they don't make sense, right? Like, why would you want to own a tulip future? And I think even though there are reasons to own Bitcoin, I think similar to tulips, it wouldn't have crashed if more people just kept buying in and nobody sold in significant numbers. For all we know, we could be trading tulip futures today. There's no good reason why they crashed, just like there was no good reason it shot up. That's my insecurity into Bitcoin, because I feel like it's accelerated too.
Yeah, there's nothing preventing it from dropping to the bottom.
Right. Just like there was nothing preventing it from rising this far. But similar to tulips, I don't see the difference.
There's no difference with that.
Yeah. So
I'm not recommending it for investment.
that's true. That's true. Perhaps we should get somebody in here that does think it's an investment and makes the counterpoint. We're approaching this from different.
I don't know if anybody does. Like the Winklevoss twins put 11 million in, but that's not like I mean, I don't know if that's an investment or not, because that was a small part of what they won from the Facebook lawsuit.
Is it?
Yeah, it's they had a lot more than that.
Yeah.
So they put a substantial amount, but I think I don't know if it was an investment or not.
Sure.
I don't really know. I'm sure it was.
Well,
in a
right.
sense
11
of-
million is no
yeah,
joke
it's not.
for anyone.
You don't just throw it around, but yeah, no.
Well, you could, depending on who you are. Bezos probably has 11 million to throw into anything he wants.
Yeah. I think there are people out there too that maybe just don't care as much about what they maybe the value of what they're doing in terms of PR value is also worth something to them.
Yeah, but it's cool to think that they bought it then and stayed in it this long, and you know.
Yeah, someone pointed out that when you make something like that happen once, it's luck, but when you do it multiple times, there's something more to it.
Yeah.
And they did that with Facebook. They did it with.
Well, if you believe them, then they are Facebook.
Right. So they had a good idea there, and they've apparently done something interesting with the cryptocurrencies.
But did they really though with Facebook? I mean, what's so much better
I don't know.
about Facebook than MySpace was or whatever? You know?
Oh, there were some. Oh, that was luck. That was not the Winklevoss.
That's my point.
It wasn't luck. Luck. It was not their involvement, though.
Yes, but I feel like I feel like something like Facebook was going to happen, and it could have continued in the MySpace realm. I feel like it's luck. Not only that, they're exposed to technology. They're around these people just like they were around Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of it, to me, seems like luck, right? Like cryptocurrency kind of thing was probably going to come about, whether it involved the Winklevosses or not. So when I say luck, I mean like, I'm not saying they're not talented, and when somebody continues to get lucky, you know, perhaps there's something there, like you said. But I mean, this isn't some. There's a reason it's not some guy from Zimbabwe that doesn't have a computer that, you know, came up with Facebook or cryptocurrency. Like, that's the field they're in. Those are the people that are around them. That's the region they live in. You know, it's ripe for that kind of development. They are wealthy people. They have money to invest or play with or whatever. I mean, that plays into it too.
Well, I think what happened with MySpace is kind of similar to what happened with Google and Facebook. Like, MySpace was first, kind of ish.
Right.
And they did it in their own way. They kind of defined it. And kind of like Metacrawler and Alta Vista and Yahoo were all first.
Yeah.
They did it in their own ways. And then people that were kind of a little wiser, kind of knew what was going on, decided a better design would work.
Yeah.
And like with Zuckerberg, I think he made certain very specific changes to what Facebook or what MySpace was doing that made it work. You know, being standard clean design rather than having everybody, you know, all that kind of stuff. And Google did the same thing with, you know, taking over search engines. They had some infrastructure benefits as well, but
yeah, but I think it was mostly the design and presentation more than
Yeah.
anything else.
yeah,
The naming structure, even.
that was, I think, I mean, I'm sure Mark and other people that were involved in originally Facebook design were a big part of that. Like, just for who they were, they understood these things, just like Sergey Brin and Larry Page understood that Google needed to work a certain way to have, you know, this thing.
But do you think the value they brought, the improvement they came up with over MySpace or whatever, was worth, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars?
Definitely.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I don't. That's interesting.
It's a fundamental design philosophy change.
Yeah, but
MySpace went with the easy aspect of let people do what they want, and Zuckerberg and the
it's not
others.
necessarily easy, but
It's easy because it sounds good. It's like if we let people do what we want, they'll be happiest. But that's not the actual truth. Is like psychology. You have to guide. You have to structure. You have to garden. And by giving people some limitations, you actually end up making things work better. But it's harder to do that.
Yeah, well, we could argue Apple versus you know, Android. What I meant by that is,
I like that, apples and androids.
well, it's true.
Yeah.
What I meant by that is, if I were in a situation to improve upon MySpace, something like Facebook is what I would have done. And I suspect, is that not obvious to you also?
No.
Really?
No.
Huh. Okay.
I know someone to whom I think it might have been obvious because he thought differently. It would be kind of the thing that I would do now, but because I learned to think differently from him.
I see. No, I think a clean design, real names, a standardized look. I mean, I think that's just what you do.
Sure. Yeah, I think I would have been more inclined to go with a MySpace approach. I think but back before I knew any of this stuff, because I don't think I had been sold on that idea.
Well, I mean, I have some exposure and interest in user interface and design, and I think as your exposure increased, that was probably
yes.
So I think anybody who had some exposure to it would probably, not anybody, you know, but a lot of people would have gone that way.
Yeah.
Same with Google. So I guess I don't see the genius in it. You know, I have a pretty high opinion of myself, don't get me wrong, but I don't think I'm special in any way. Like, I think
I think it was genius for them to do it as early as they did in the ways that they did.
Are you referring to Google or Facebook?
More Google, I think.
Okay.
Not Facebook. This Facebook was 2004-ish, which was well after certain things.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I do think Google was sort of a more substantial change to the landscape than Facebook was. Yeah. I'd agree with that. Anyway, do we have any closing points? I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here.
We haven't covered almost anything that I wanted to, but it was interesting.
What did you want to cover?
There were all the details of the interesting things that I find about cryptocurrencies, and I guess the technical aspects, and some getting into the weeds kind of stuff. But
should we do that another time, or should we? What do you want?
If you want, some other time.
Okay. Let's. I'll do a follow up. Let's see how this one goes and go from there.
Yeah. No, I think you got the basic idea in a nutshell. I'm not investing on hedging.
Yeah. No. And it's that makes me feel better about the future of the world, I guess. I think there are too many people who see it as a potential quick buck. And I think that's unhealthy for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's the right way to look at it, though, for a number of reasons.
I completely agree. All right, we'll cap it off there for now.
Thanks. It was an engaging conversation, and I learned some things.
That was fun. I would have liked to cover more of the technical aspects too, but maybe we can do that another time.
Yeah.
I will stop my recordings.